And here we are on the radio. It's Marlow FM. It's about 4 minutes now past 2 o'clock, and it's Thursday, the 6th of June. My name is Mark Harris, and I'm presenting Biz Buzz today, and my regular fortnightly buddy Mike Duckett isn't here. He's away. He's celebrating his birthday. I know what the big number is, but I'm not going to say just in case I'm not supposed to. But happy birthday, Mike. And instead co-presenting with me is Daryl Polos of Polos & Partners. How are you?
I'm fine, and thanks for having me back.
Good. Back is the right word. How many times have you been on the show now?
3 or 4, I think.
Yeah, I think so. You started not as you were Father Christmas last
true.
December. Yeah, that was a
fun.
fun show. It was a fun show. It was a good one. So welcome back, Nigel Harding of Amodeo Web Design. I believe a Biz Buzz virgin. This is your first time.
It is, yes.
Lovely. What do you think of it so far?
So far, so good. Early days. Though.
I can be honest, you've done nothing wrong so far, which is really good news. And
he sets very high standards.
Absolutely. I look forward to saying that in an hour and a half. I'm sure I will be. And Karen Pavlovska of Take One Communications, you are here for the second time with us?
I think it might be the third time.
Ooh, God, almost more often than me. We love it. Well, I welcome you all, and in order to welcome Karen properly, I chose the first song by Richard Carpenter. Do you know what it might be by any chance? It's called Karen's Theme. Well, I think that's the most gentle start to a Biz Buzz programme that I've ever done. That was Karen's Theme by Richard Carpenter, all about his sister Karen. Didn't think much of the lyrics, but the music was good. So tell me, Karen, seeing as we're talking about you, let's talk about you. Take One Communications, what do you do? Where are you based? What can you tell me?
We're based in High Wycombe, which is not far from Marlow, and we're actually a video production company, and we make video programmes for all sorts of businesses, all shapes and sizes, but mostly for larger companies that need to be able to communicate with their staff or their employees in a reliable and engaging way. These days, people want to actually keep their staff for longer, make them motivated, and they want to keep their clients for longer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You said programmes. To me, programme is like half an hour, or is it short things?
It varies. I mean, actually, people's attention span is much shorter than it used to be anyway.
Well,
now.
that's enough from you. No, exactly.
And so generally, a corporate type program is going to be about maximum 5 or 6 minutes, and if it's going on the web, maybe even less than that, maybe 2 minutes or so.
Okay, so some pretty short stuff when it's needed. And I guess that a lot of the stuff that's going on the web is going to be mainly the sort of the 2 minute type things, because I guess the attention span is, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, on the web, people won't watch for much longer than, unless it's about cute kittens or traffic accidents, I suppose, or weather. Then they seem to watch forever. Yeah. And Nigel, you weren't supposed to be here. It was supposed to be Rosie from Amodeo Web Design, and she's poorly. She's got a bad back, so apologies to people to whom I tweeted inappropriately. But we're very happy to have you here. Amodeo Web Design. I'm dying to ask where the name comes from, but before you tell me that, where are you based? And I'm going to take a wild stab and say you're a web design company.
Yes.
I don't know how I got
you
there.
are sharp.
Intuition.
We are also based in High Wycombe. Amodeo Web Design has been operating for 4 years now.
Okay.
I'm a director at that company, and I'm a practitioner, so I do the web design and development work. And as a company, we also concern ourselves with driving traffic to websites, helping people with their marketing, and engaging with all those other activities, which is a part of the marketing mix.
Okay, so it's broader than just designing a website.
Yes, the website is the core of our business, but it's so interrelated these days that you have to be aware of other things that are going on.
As they say, there's no point having a shop unless someone can find it. So
Yes.
all those other things kick into play. And do you know, where does the name Amodeo come from? I assume you were involved at that point.
It's an Italian-sounding name, and we wanted to kind of tie into that Italian sense of flair and passion for design.
Lovely.
It also has a family connection.
Okay.
It's my mother-in-law's family name, and she comes from Italy.
Oh,
okay.
It's interesting because I thought of Amadeus, and Mozart.
Yeah,
Certainly
no,
not Italian. But
It's Amodeo, not
I know,
Amadeus.
but it has that sound, It's,
Yeah, he was German, wasn't he? Wolfgang Amadeus,
or Austrian, or
something like that. Yeah, one of those places.
probably Prussian when he was born.
Absolutely. as regular listeners to our show, Mike and mine show normally, will know, the format of the show these days is we pick on sort of business-related news items, sometimes very themed to our specialist knowledge, and sometimes just general stuff from the news, and we chat. And we're very happy for people at home to join in that chat. They can do so by sending us an email to studio@marlowfm.co.uk, or they can send a text to 07900 975 975. If they're really brave, they can phone us on 01628 488 975. But if you do phone, please phone while we're playing a piece of music, and then we can get you all teed up, ready to go live on the air while the music is playing. So that's enough of all of that. Let's get to our first story, which is one that Karen found, and we were chatting a little earlier, and a couple of us had seen it as well. So you may well have seen it.
It's about as ungentle,
and
extreme as the Karen's theme.
Absolutely, going from Karen's theme to this in one fell swoop. It's about Gloucestershire cheese rolling taking place despite warning. That's the headline on the Gloucestershire page of BBC News. Why did this catch your eye, Karen?
It caught my eye because I kind of saw it and thought, yes, I'm glad they took part anyway and did it. Because I find these days that in business that we come across more and more people who try to stop you doing things for no real genuine reason. It's a kind of, I'm scared in case something happens, or I don't want to make a decision. And this kind of, I suppose it's really kind of a health and safety thing for this on this particular one, but it just made me think, I'm so glad they actually went ahead and did it. Because if they've taken proper precautions and told everyone, be careful, you take part at your own risk, why shouldn't people do it?
Well, seeing as you asked the question, I'm not sure. As is often the case with me, I have an opinion and I disagree with it. It's
just one opinion.
Yeah, just one.
Yeah.
The reason they shouldn't do it is because it's dangerous, and there is a responsibility on us all to try and stop other people doing foolish things and getting into danger.
But wouldn't it be better to actually then let it take place, but control it so that the danger is limited?
Isn't it better to not let it take place? Then there's no danger.
It's a tradition. I think you should let it take place.
You know what? There were fights between gladiators and lions that used to be a tradition, but they don't do that
But
anymore.
that wasn't voluntary.
It wasn't voluntary.
It was for the crowd. The crowd were there completely voluntarily.
Yeah. But you say, Mark, because it's dangerous, maybe it shouldn't be allowed, but driving a car is dangerous. Lots of people get killed with cars.
Yeah. And there are lots of things that are done to minimise that danger. Most people here are the four of us in the room are running businesses, and I'm sure lots of people listening are either working in businesses or running businesses, and every one of those businesses has this thing called the bane of health and safety. And believe me, I get how much of a pain it can be and how foolish some of it can seem, but actually the reasoning behind it is to protect people, sometimes to protect people from themselves. And driving a car is dangerous, but you can't stay at home all the time, so you try and minimise the danger. Well, you can stay at home all the time.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so you try and minimise that danger. That has to be the best option.
But I'm not so sure. I think health and safety sometimes, I'm with you. A lot of it annoys me, but at the same time, they do get a bad rap because a lot of the things that sometimes people complain about aren't in fact rules or regulations within health and safety. And occasionally they'll kick back and say, hey, we never said that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a gentleman who's graced our chairs in the Marlow FM studio by the name of Chris Stopps, who's a health and safety man, and one of his favourite things to do is busting myths. He hates all of those excuses for poor customer service that is actually by saying, oh no, health and safety can't do that, when actually you can do that, and it's nothing to do with health and safety. They just don't really want to do it.
It's just an excuse to try and sometimes just to people don't want to make decisions, or they don't want to sort of put themselves out, so they just say no, you can't, and they use health and safety as a reason not to do it.
Absolutely.
Or people sometimes become defensive and over defensive, and they're a bit frightened of the consequences of what might happen if they just do take a quantifiable risk on an activity.
And I think it's a sign of the world we live in today, that people are a bit frightened of getting sued because it is litigious, and they err on the side of caution just in case, because why would you want to get sued?
part of that, though, seems to me we've kind of changed in our lifetime, where we've kind of reached a point where somebody has to be blamed.
Yeah, I'm going to say, is it
If
my
you fall
fault?
over, it must be somebody's fault.
If I trip over something on the pavement, is it my fault for not looking where I'm going? Or is it the council's fault for having a hole in the pavement?
That is a question we will leave hanging in the air, because it's time for a piece of music, and it's really warm in this studio because summertime has arrived, and I'd love to open the window and fling it wide, but there's a whole load of kids outside making lots of noise, and so we can't do that. So we're sitting here a little bit sweltering because it's the summertime, and the next track is Mungo Jerry. In the Summertime, which was chosen by Daryl, who's going to enlighten us all now as to why he chose this song.
Well, to me, it is just the classic summer tune.
Absolutely. I have to say, it's one of my favourites. So here we go, Mungo Jerry in the Summertime. Ooh, we were all singing along in the studio, and we nearly went back on air at the little tiny break in the song, but then we've realised it's not talking time yet. But it's talking time now, and we're going to talk about Google's Eric Schmidt, who was reported in the news as being perplexed over the UK tax debate. And from my perspective, this whole thing about big corporates, Starbucks, Google, whoever else, paying, quote, not enough tax, unquote, I have sort of changed my mind on this subject, and for people who know me and say you never change your mind, Mark, I've changed my mind. I have been persuaded, and I did think it was all disgusting and it shouldn't be allowed and something has to be done. And actually, I still think something has to be done, but actually it is being allowed. They're not breaking any laws anywhere. They're playing by the rules, and they don't make the rules. There are some mad dictators around the world who make their own rules and then play by them. That's not the situation here. Google didn't make the tax laws in any country in the world. Each individual country did, and each individual country collectively has set up the system, and they're just playing by the rules. So are people not supposed to play by the rules anymore?
Yeah. Well, there are rules, yes, and then there's what's right, and those aren't always the same.
Okay, so just suppose that I'm Mr. Schmidt, okay, and you can be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and you say you should pay more tax, and I say, well, how much more tax? Because the only way you can work out how much more tax I should pay is by following a set of rules. Well, actually, we're following the rules. We're paying precisely the right amount of tax in the UK, not a penny more, not a penny less.
But all of us are in business, and we all know that there are gray areas. And for example, sequestering their sales into Ireland was a decision they made, and probably not based on the bulk of evidence. The average person would say those transactions were conducted in the UK.
Okay, are they following the rules?
Well,
yes.
they may be driving a horse and cart through the rules, but
they're following the rules, and I do things to try and cut cost out of my business. Is that wrong? Should I be trying to pay more expensive electricity and go for a higher priced internet access? Because that would help stimulate the economy and put more money back into it.
But I think taxes are in a different category than your utility bills.
I agree, because I have a choice of which utility provider I use. I don't have a choice how much tax I pay. There's a set of rules, and I have an accountant who's fairly clever and works their way through the set of rules and says, Mark, the bad news is you owe £2,821 in tax. I wish it was that small. But you owe whatever.
You're lucky.
Yeah, isn't it nice owing
Be
tax?
thankful you have a tax
Clever
bill.
accountant.
Yeah, business must be good. But no, the point is that my accountant follows the rules and says, here's your tax situation, Mark. And actually, she suggests things sometimes that I've missed, because actually there is a rule that says I'm entitled to X, Y, and Z. And I say, well, that's fine. If I'm entitled to it, then I can. So, for example, I don't want to get too personal here, but I claim half the monthly cost of my mobile phone as a business expense because I use it for business. Lots and lots. And I wouldn't have nearly such a sophisticated device if I didn't. But I wasn't claiming for that, and she said, oh, you should because you can. So I do. So do you want to give me a hard time too?
Not about that.
Well, what's the difference? Is it just the scale of things?
Well, for me, I think tax falls into a different category than utilities or your mobile phone. I mean, it's part of something that's going back into the society that allows your business to be given birth and exist.
Right, but the point about my mobile phone is I'm using that rule to reduce the amount of tax that I pay, because I pay tax on my profits, and that reduces my profits because an extra expense in the business, so I pay less tax. So I am as guilty as Mr. Schmidt, but just with a subtly different number of zeros on the end.
But what I think is unfair about this, Mark, is it's a rule of scalability. Google is a huge corporation who can afford the best lawyers to explore the best possible loopholes for tax avoidance. And is it morally right that a huge company should throw its weight about in that way, whereas smaller business owners are having to pay the full cop and their full proportion of tax because they can't afford to explore ways around it, shall we say. So I think it's really, I sense moral outrage on the streets that a big corporate can get away with it and we have to toe the line.
Okay, I get that. I get that completely. And I go back to almost where I started, which was to say, and it shouldn't be allowed. And I'll agree, it shouldn't be allowed. But what needs to happen is they need to change the rules. You can't give somebody a hard time. I feel you can, because people are giving them a hard time for obeying the rules. But I feel it's really, really unfair to give people a hard time for obeying the rules. What you have to do is make the rules more fit for purpose. And we live in a different world these days to when the rules were made. You know, you can transfer several billion across the world in the wink of an eye. And you know, it's a different setup.
But I just think it's disingenuous for him to say, I can't imagine he did not have a conversation with his chief financial officer, say, by the way, you realize we could save a lot of money if we just, you know, argued that those sales should be booked over there instead of over here.
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that I save a little bit of money by putting part of the cost of my mobile phone through the business. The difference is
there's
the scale.
probably more logic and a better argument for what you're doing with your phone than what they're doing with their sales revenue.
So luckily the Chancellor won't be after me then.
Well, I hope they get audited.
Love it. Okay, time for a piece of music to lighten the tone a little. Bicycle by Queen was one that Karen chose, which is much better than the one I chose for you. Why? Is it just because it's cheery and got a ding-a-ling on the beginning?
Well, it's bicycle. I think, you know, so when the weather's nicer, it's time to get out on your bicycles, and also it's got it's a song that was very popular and moving up the charts when I was working at the Beeb many years ago, and I remember it being played in the studio next door to us whilst we were doing something with some other rock group I can't remember, gone here today, gone tomorrow type of group that never appeared again, and it's kind of got those sort of memories for me.
Love it. Bicycle by Queen. Here we go. The delightful Queen and Bicycle. And seeing as that was your song, Karen, we're going to go with one of your stories next, which is, we were just talking about my phone, and this is quite pertinent to me. Go for it.
Oh, well, it was an article that says the average smartphone user checks it every 6 minutes, or that's 150 times a day. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've certainly noticed that people seem to be kind of plugged into their phones. They can't seem to put them down for more than a few seconds. They're always looking at them wherever they are. And I think that's detrimental. And apparently in this article, they're saying that it is damaging our relaxation time and is unhealthy for us.
Wow. I get that. I hate to pick up on the maths, but this 6 minutes or 150 times a day, I'm guessing it's 150 times a day, but you're actually only awake for 8 hours. Does that still, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, you're asleep for, no, you're awake, well, I'm only awake for 8 hours.
15 hours, yeah. 10 times an hour, 15 hours a day.
Okay, fine, so every 6 minutes. Well, for me, it's about every 6 seconds. So I really get what you're saying, and I get that it's not a good thing. I was at but I do try, and I don't know whether or not other people try, but I do try to control it. So I was at a business breakfast this morning, and the phone was on silent. It was in my pocket, and it buzzed about 15 times in the space of an hour and a half, and because it was pretty early, so not many people were sending me messages then, and I ignored it. You know, it just buzzes. Whatever it is, it'll wait till 9 o'clock when I'm on my way somewhere.
I actually just turn mine off when I go to those sorts of meetings.
I just can't bring myself to do it.
I just don't carry mine. My children get really angry with me. I don't have it with me
You
now.
what?
I left the house
you don't
without it.
have your phone? No. Oh, my word.
But it's interesting you talk about detrimental, Karen, because for me, whether it's detrimental for the person who's doing it, it's certainly detrimental to my health because my blood pressure just goes crazy. If I'm sitting in a room with people and all they're doing is looking at their phone, I just find it so socially...
It's quite rude, isn't it,
rude.
as well? Yeah. I mean, we had, a couple of years back now, my son had a friend round for dinner one evening, and he was kept looking at his phone, my son's friend said, "What's so important that you can't eat and converse with us?" I said, "Oh, well, it's so-and-so." He said, "Well, you'll still be there when you finish your food."
Yeah. We went to my in-laws for Christmas Day, which is a standard Christmas day for us, and it's lovely. And thank you for having us and yummy turkey. And when we arrived, on the front door was a big sign that said, "Mobile phones must be switched off."
I like that one. I might use that myself.
And we did. We were guests in their house, and we switched our mobile phones off. And every now and then.
You see, the other thing is when we're out filming, we always say, "Please switch your mobile phones off," because it interferes with the radio mics, or it can do. And a number of people that still leave them on, but leave them on silent.
Yeah.
And except someone's got a mobile phone on because it's buzzing on the mic. But we have to do that again now.
Yeah.
Who's got the mobile phone on?
Yeah.
But did you see the other article about the musician that was in a concert and somebody was filming with their smartphone and he got up and walked out of the auditorium?
Really?
Because it's intellectual theft.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, but loads of people film stuff in
You do
But
see that a
his
lot
comment
now.
was, he says, "You do not know how much in terms of my musical loss, in terms of contracts, has been because of YouTube."
Yeah.
People will say, "Why should I buy your records? I can see it on YouTube."
Yeah. That's valid. Valid. Okay. But for me, there are times when I agree 100%. It's just wrong. You need to be focused on the conversation. You're in a business. I've seen people in business meetings. Not a meeting with 15 people and they're just not actually involved that time. That's slightly different. But on a one-to-one business meeting, and they're looking at their phone while they're having a meeting. You're sitting up at the Holiday Inn at Handy Cross or wherever, watching the other people, and I just can't believe that.
They're wondering whether it's an important enough message to divert them from the current meeting.
Are you more important?
And
than
you're
the
thinking,
person?
why can't you just give me 30 minutes or 60 minutes of your full attention while I'm in this meeting with you?
Is it also to do with this sort of feeling that you've got to do everything much faster? You've got to respond quickly to things.
Yeah. I know somebody who is very, very like that, and if you haven't replied in 4 or 5 minutes, then he's on the phone. "Did you get my email?"
Yeah.
Well, that is the other price you pay with the connectivity and the expectations that people have about having you on the leash all the time. And they do expect, even if it's in the evening, Mark's going to pick it up and he's going to respond to me.
Yeah, very much so. And it's interesting because what I've started doing now, I'm the proud owner of an iPhone 4S.
There are other brands available.
Brands and models available, yeah. And it has a note-taking thing, as in, you can type notes into it. And I've taken to using that as a tool. I know how some people are richer than me and have an iPad, and they use that as a note-taking device because it's got a much bigger keyboard, and the keyboard is a bit there. But I have the phone on so that I can actually take notes as we're going. But what I make absolutely sure is early on in the meeting is that the screen is visible to them, so they can see it's the sort of the yellow post-it note type screen with some text on it, and they can see that I'm taking notes.
Well, that's acceptable.
And that you're not monitoring your bet that you may want to reclaim halfway through the game.
Absolutely, and I'm not just texting somebody or whatever. I am focused on the meeting. I'm not using my phone. I'm using my note-taking device.
And that's a positive thing, because I think if people are taking notes in a meeting, it tends to me means that they are paying attention.
Absolutely, which is the precise opposite of checking your emails and stuff. It's interesting. We talk often on this program about networking and as in physical networking, not social networking, although we talk about that too. And for me, one of the big crimes of physical networking, I hate when I'm standing talking to somebody, and instead of looking me in the eye, they're looking about a foot to my right, just in case there's someone more interesting to talk to. And I feel, sometimes I feel like saying, well, if you want to just go out and check out the rest of the room, then come back to me later, we can do that. But of course, I'm not so rude as to say so. And it's the same with the mobile phone. Are you just checking if there's something more interesting to do, something more important than me? Because if I'm not important, we can stop the meeting right now. That's really not a problem.
Of course, there is the legitimate use. If I was in a meeting with you, I might tell my PA to call me in 10 minutes to get me out.
That's funny. I did that last week when I was in a meeting with you.
Is that why you left early?
Absolutely, yeah. It cost me a tenner, but it was worth it. Okay, it's 2:38 in the afternoon, which sort of means it's time for a piece of music. And having started with something really, really gentle, we're going to have, I think, that was the gentlest start in a Biz Buzz show that we've done. I think this is the first piece of classical music that we played, and I was a bit worried when Karen said she wanted to choose something classical, because I thought, well, it's going to be an hour and a half that's going to blow out the show. But she chose...
There was method, I thought...
This is like classic FM, we just have
Absolutely,
highlights.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm going to put on my very best Radio 3 voice and say we now have the Nutcracker Suite, Opus 71A, played for us by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and I have absolutely no idea who's conducting it, and I also have absolutely no idea... Well, I do sort of know why Karen chose it. It's because her first 8 choices I couldn't do. And if you think I'm exaggerating, then you're wrong. So is there anything at all you like about this, other than the fact that I've actually got it?
It was actually my first choice was Swan Lake, and that was because it was my first ever LP that I had when LPs were vinyls, and this was my second ever LP.
Oh, that's not bad then.
We are in a strange company. Her first LP was a classic one.
Yeah, and so was a second. Fine. The Nutcracker Suite. Sit back, have a nice little relax to this. Fabulous. I feel so much better. I feel like a fruit and nut. And there are other brands of chocolate available. I have a question, which is, why is 2013 the year of responsive web design? But the question that I personally have no idea what the answer is, and I'm going to ask Nigel to help us out here, is what is responsive web design?
Responsive web design is quite a new term which has been coined by an American chap called Ethan Marcotte. And it's the phrase which has been used to describe what should websites do when we visit them with mobile devices. So when we want to look at a website using a smartphone or a tablet, we're having an increasing expectation that we want the website to look good on those devices as well as the traditional website. Now, the traditional website market is quite mature. It's been going for almost 20 years, but the explosion of smartphones is quite a new phenomenon. So the interesting question is, how do we approach this as a web community? And how do we cater for people who want content to look good on traditional websites and also on smaller phones and tablets as well?
Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit into that and just use common sense about responsive web design. So I'm looking at a web page, and I guess that the actual page changes depending on the device that I'm looking at it from or on. I'm tempted to say, how does it do that?
I select that, or does the system know that I'm on my phone this time instead of my PC?
Your device now ought to be able to detect that. So to give you a bit more history, web designers used to build websites for a fixed width of a screen, and we kind of had a good idea of what that width was when it was a desktop website. Some companies, the BBC would be one, started to produce a bespoke website for a small device. So in the last 5 or so years, BBC has had a site called m.bbc.co.uk specifically for mobile devices. But the problem with that is that you're building and designing and maintaining 2 distinct websites. You're almost having a website for mobile and a website for desktop.
Okay.
We're now thinking that isn't really sensible. It's such a duplication of effort. So websites are being designed so that they adapt and look good on whichever form factor they're viewed with.
Okay, and is it just called so that I can sound clever when I'm next in a conversation?
Well, anything helps, I suppose.
Yes, you'll need more than just words.
Absolutely. Is it HTML6 or is it just called responsive web design? Is there a posh phrase, or is responsive web design the posh phrase?
One of the key elements of responsive web design is CSS3. CSS is cascading style sheet code. It's the style code of a website. And that's recently got smart enough to detect what kind of device is visiting and viewing the website. So it can serve up a layout according to the device which is being used to view the site.
But that sounds like something, you need as a professional. That's the kind of knowledge you have. It's like knowing how to take the BMW engine apart. I mean, but for our listeners what's important in this in terms of the average kind of small, medium enterprise business that might
well,
be
if
out
you're a business owner and let's say you're selling product, you want to make it as easy as possible as you can for your visitor to purchase the product on your website. So if we have a traditional desktop website and you're trying to view it on your smartphone, you may be able to scroll around and zoom in and enter credit card numbers, for example. But if you have a responsive site which has been designed to have bigger boxes to take credit card details, it's going to be easier for your client to process the transaction and make the purchase. And that's what you want, because other things being equal, your visitors will gravitate towards a website which is easier to use on a mobile device than have to struggle against something which is good on the website.
I have on occasion gone away from a website because it's been too difficult for me to actually input the information, and I'll do it maybe 2, maybe 3 times, and then I'll give up.
Or the load times for a lot of information I really didn't need just took forever, and it was. But so it sounds like for our listeners, then what they need to be thinking is that if their products or services could potentially be sold via the website, that they have to recognize that a substantial portion of people, maybe even a growing proportion of people, might be accessing those web services through smartphones or tablets or something else.
Yeah, some UK figures from 2012, 28% of internet usage is from a mobile phone.
Wow.
And that figure's going to go up and up and up.
Yeah.
So we're talking about people checking their phones all the time?
Yeah, every 6 minutes you're going to be looking at your website.
But you see, what I find, let's not go back to the phone thing, but talking about web on the phone, which is, as you say, it's big, I find more and more and more people say, oh God, who did that song? Or how long will it take me to get there? And I just grab the phone, pull it up, bingo, there it is, either from an app that I've got or from Google or whatever. And it is a useful device to have sitting around. I'm stroking mine now as we speak. That's my telephone. Cost. If I said to you, will you build me a website to this specification, please? Would the answer be the same, whether it's a responsive web design or what I might call an old-fashioned web design?
That's something you would probably have to discuss with your web design company.
I am discussing it.
The building.
Yeah, you're a web design
From
company.
my point of view, there is more effort involved in designing more screen layouts and building more stuff. So you're probably adding, 30 to 40% more to the cost.
Oh, really? So that's quite substantive.
So the CSS3 thing is powerful and interesting, but it comes at a price, which is 30 to 40% more build time.
That's a query that will send your web browser to look at the appropriate bit of style code, and more ranges of style code has to be generally written. So yes, it is more labour intensive to produce something like that.
So if I'm going to go for a good quality but low end, let's say £1,000 for a website is going to get me something worth having, but not the most all singing, all dancing thing. If I want it web responsive, then it's going to be sort of $1,300-1,400 instead.
I think you would expect to pay more, yes.
Which for even if it was only $1,200, a 20% uplift for a small business who are being cautious with their funds, they really need to understand the return on investment for that extra money, which I guess if there's any, from what you said, if there's any kind of e-commerce involved, if people can enter stuff on screen, then they're going to get the return on investment, because it doesn't take, depending on what product you're selling, to make £200 worth of profit or £300 worth of profit, it probably doesn't take too many extra orders or extra products on an order to make that money back.
Yes.
And the other thing is it more cost effective to do it that way from the start, or if you say, well, actually I can't quite afford that extra 40% now, could I do it later? Is it going to cost you more if you do it later?
It's probably easier to build it up from scratch in a responsive way, but we certainly get lots of clients coming to us now who are recognising the situation they're in and they want to have a responsive site, so of course we do whatever we we can to help them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess what's going through my mind, Nigel, should like so many things in the web world, should I wait 2 years and something better is going to be there? So should I live with my old architecture for a while, thinking that maybe something better than CSS3 or whatever it is going to come along in 18 months?
Well, perhaps a good thing to do in the short term is to look at your website statistics and to have a look. You can actually see which devices are accessing your website. So if you find that you're starting to get a high number of smartphone devices which are accessing your pages, then maybe it's time to think seriously about this and take action.
Yeah. Because one of the questions I was going to ask is, how do you judge? Do you go for the 1,300 or the 1,000, and that's how you judge? Let me thank you for picking a useful thing. I feel a tad more educated now. Let me thank you also for picking a track by U2, because I love U2. Saw them live at Wembley a year or so ago. Had Silver Circle tickets that were just fab, and it was good.
And you bought them on the internet?
No. I got them from a circuitous route, but it was completely legit. Anyway, moving on. Sometimes you can't make it on your own. Out of all the U2 tracks, you chose that one. Any particular?
They're a great band. They've produced some great songs throughout the years. This is probably one of their most emotional songs, and it's Bono talking about his father and his father's approaching death. He's going to die. And he expresses some of his feelings about that. I just think it's raw emotion, great music, great track.
And I'm sure we're all going to be cheered up immensely by it. Here we go. Okay, we just got really quite educated on web responsive pages and stuff. And now we're going to learn about insight selling. What's insight selling, Darryl?
Well, that is a kind of a new trend where people are using the exact same kind of information and design that Nigel was talking about in terms of responsive web service to identify consumers and segment them into groups that they actually can address and then draw in and keep them tightly bound to their business.
Okay.
And the key is this idea of insight selling, which is not really dissimilar to what we used to know as solution selling, but it is better. It's a step beyond solution selling in that it's based on really getting to know people, and that's of course allowed because of the technology allows people to see and know more about what people are doing.
Okay, so is that actually new?
Well, it's new in the sense that the technology is allowing the retailers that have switched on to it to actually speak and target a very specific subset or segment and keep them, loyal and interested and close to their businesses. I mean, a couple of examples in the article are like a bicycle chain in Washington, D.C. And there's
bicycle chain, is that supposed to be funny?
Yes. That's what we call them in America. Anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a highly competitive market in Washington, D.C., but this one shop has realized that for a lot of cyclists, it's a lifestyle thing. So they've virtually built a whole lifestyle social system around their company, and they use this insight marketing, and they use the technology to stay in touch with those people.
So are they overtly trying to sell things to people, or are they just providing them with information they know will be useful to them? I know one of the things in the article we're looking at on the BBC News website, it talks about safe paths for cycles, and things like that. So
some of it was just sharing information and stuff, but the others were they did organize workshops to how to maintain your bike. So in a way, potentially even cannibalizing some of their own business.
Okay. That's interesting. Is there in your experience, Nigel, is it good for people to give away their trade secrets on their website?
Interesting question. I mean, the whole question of information that we leave out there on the internet and the footprint that we leave behind, people are finding ways of recording that and getting access to it. So you've got to be very careful about putting trade secrets on websites or any kind of secret that you don't want someone else to kind of know about. I mean, I think whatever we put out there is in the public domain now, largely, and we have to be careful how we, how we handle that information. We have to be conscious of how people will respond and use that information as well. But
let me just correct one thing, Mark. They were running the workshops live, face-to-face, people coming in. It wasn't a tutorial on the internet, but they were using their technology to get those people in, and then they felt like they kind of belonged and the organization cared for them. So they were trading off an affiliation, and a lot of these people they've read their clients right, would do their own maintenance anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're just getting some expert tuition. Oh, and while I'm here, I'll spend $1,000 on a new bike.
Or some new cycling kit or whatever.
Yeah, very interesting. I wonder how many businesses out there are using ways like that to hook people in.
There are some of the larger companies certainly are looking at that at the moment and basing it around the it's like, if we know you're retiring in X years, when you come up to that sort of time, you're going to have to be more interested in what's happening with your pension, so we can target you with stuff.
Yeah, but that's okay. So that's targeted marketing, which I get. I won't tell you about the emails I get from Saga because it really annoys me. Because there's no way I'm that old.
Oh yes, you are.
Oh no, I'm not. But targeted marketing and this sort of insight, it's about sucking people in. I suppose somebody did send me the Saga magazine a little while ago because they thought it was really funny. And looking at all of the articles in there, they're all things that are of interest to someone of my kind of age. And someone of my kind of age has got an 80-year-old mother, so the standard stair lifts weren't interesting for me, thank the Lord. But actually, am I looking at spending money on that sort of thing for her? So, I get how just sort of associating yourself with people to give them useful stuff. There was a thing yesterday I heard about anti-terrorism and the number of people to be followed and the amount of people. There just isn't the resource available to process all the information, and I can't process all the information I get. So I guess that insightful marketing is going to help me to filter out what I need to be doing.
Yeah, so it's less about that targeted marketing, and it's more about just getting to know people and finding other ways to tie into them.
Absolutely. And speaking about getting to know things, it's time to be getting to know what's going on in the big wide world. We will have some news at 3, and we'll be back for more chat.